Close your eyes for a second. Try to remember 2008. If you lived through it, you remember the sound. The sound of 2008 was loud. There were shouts on the New York Stock Exchange floor. There were police sirens. There were journalists yelling on television, while families placed cardboard boxes on the sidewalk because they had just lost their homes. The financial collapse had a face. There was crying. There was noise. There was the vivid image of bankers emerging from glass buildings with their belongings in their hands. We knew who to blame. We knew what we had lost. Money, homes, jobs, physical things, things that could be recovered with time and hard work. Now open your eyes and look at today. Look at the crisis unfolding right now, at this very moment, as you listen to me. What is the sound of the artificial intelligence crisis? There are no screams. There are no sirens. There are no boxes on the sidewalk. The sound of this crisis is the constant, monotonous hum of millions of servers in air-conditioned rooms in the middle of the desert. It is the silent sound of a mouse click. It is the sound of a notification arriving on your cell phone saying that the company's restructuring has been completed. Nobody sees the smoke because the fire isn't in the buildings. The fire is inside us. In 2008, the system broke our bank accounts. Today, artificial intelligence is breaking something much deeper. It's breaking the human spirit. And most of us are so distracted by the magical convenience of generating quick images and texts that we haven't noticed the time bomb that has stopped ticking and started to detonate. Let's be brutally honest. You feel it. You feel a strange anxiety in the pit of your stomach that you can't explain. You see the news about the value of tech companies soaring to trillions of dollars, but you look around and see your creative friends, writers, programmers, designers, all with that blank stare of someone who doesn't know if they'll be useful in 6 months. This isn't a typical economic recession. This is an existential recession. They said AI would take away the boring work. They said it would wash the dishes and clean the floors so we could write poetry and paint pictures. It was the biggest lie of the century. A guy is writing the poetry and painting the pictures, and we're the ones left with the dirty dishes and the floor to clean. But this time, with a lower salary and no hope of social advancement. To understand why this is worse than 2008, we need to understand the mechanism of the catastrophe. Back then, the crisis was caused by toxic mortgages. Banks took debts that would never be repaid, packaged them all in pretty papers, and sold them as if they were gold. They called it subprime. Today, we are living through the subprime of reality. Technology companies are taking all human knowledge, all our art, all our logic, all our soul deposited on the internet, and packaging it into mathematical models to sell us back a diluted and synthetic version of ourselves. But here's the sordid detail that nobody tells you at the tech conference. In 2008, when the bubble burst, people lost their homes, but they kept their skills. The carpenter still knew how to hammer. The accountant still knew how to audit. They could start over. Today, the crisis is different. AI isn't just taking away your current job. It's taking away your ability to be useful in the future. It's devaluing human experience to zero. Imagine a young architect named Lucas. He spent 5 years in college, pulling all-nighters, learning about structure, aesthetics, and art history. He enters the job market full of passion, but the firm where he works has just signed a contract with a new generative AI tool. Lucas's boss no longer needs him to draw blueprints or create models. The boss only needs Lucas to type a text command. In seconds, the machine spits out 50 variations of buildings that would take Lucas weeks to design. At first, Lucas thinks it's incredible. He feels powerful. But after 3 months, he realizes the trap. He's no longer designing. He's become a casino slot machine operator, pulling the lever and waiting to see what comes out. His skill atrophies. His critical eye, trained for years, now serves only to choose which of the machine's options is the least bad. And then comes the final blow. The boss realizes he doesn't need to pay a junior architect to write text commands. He can pay an intern from any area, or better yet, he can do it himself. Lucas is fired, but he didn't just lose his salary. He lost his career. Because in any other office he goes to, the machine will be there. His knowledge has become obsolete. Lucas didn't just lose his income, he lost his identity. He's no longer an architect. He's a remnant of an era that's over. And this is happening to lawyers, doctors, accountants, filmmakers. We are creating an entire generation of people who are functionally useless to capital. In 2008, the economy bled. Today, the economy is drowning in a toxic abundance. It has never been so easy to create content. It has never been so easy to generate code. It has never been so easy to produce reports. We have so much of everything that nothing has value anymore. It's the inflation of mediocrity. When everything is perfect, fast, and cheap, human excellence becomes irrelevant. And when excellence is worthless, why bother? Why study for 10 years to become a master at something if an algorithm can mimic your result in 10 seconds for pennies? This is the destruction of the person that the title of this video promises to explain. It's the destruction of motivation. We are seeing the beginning of a global collective depression. It's not just sadness. It's a profound feeling of uselessness. Human beings need purpose. We need to feel that our effort moves the world, even if only by a millimeter. AI tells us every day that our effort is unnecessary, that we are slow, that we are expensive, that we are flawed. And don't think this only affects those who work in front of a computer. The shockwave will hit everyone. Remember the housing crisis? When the banks collapsed, the owner of the corner bakery, who had nothing to do with Wall Street, went bankrupt because nobody had money to buy bread anymore. The AI crisis will work the same way, but with a terrible social aggravating factor. When you strip the dignity from the work of millions of middle-class people, you create a political powder keg. People without purpose and without a future are dangerous. They look for scapegoats. They look for radical saviors. They want to see the system burn because the system has told them they are worthless. We are heading towards a social collapse that will make the 2008 protests look like a picnic in the park. But there's an even darker layer to this story, something that tech evangelists try to hide with all their might. They call it alignment. I call it the death of truth. In 2008, we knew the bonds were worthless because ultimately people didn't pay their mortgages. Reality prevailed. With AI, reality is being rewritten in real time. We no longer know if the photo we see on the news is real. We don't know if the politician's voice in the leaked audio is really his. We don't know if the scientific article was written by a researcher or hallucinating from a language model. The foundation of civilized society is trust. We trust that what we see is true. We trust that the person on the other side of the screen is human. AI has dissolved that trust like acid. We are entering the age of total paranoia. And what happens to the human mind when it can't trust anything? It breaks down. The number of cases of burnout, anxiety, and dissociation from reality is exploding. It's no coincidence. It's the human brain trying to cope with an environment it didn't evolve for. An environment where social proof, visual truth, and human connection have been industrially falsified. You might be thinking I'm being pessimistic, that every technological revolution brought fear, but in the end, generated more jobs. They said that during the Industrial Revolution. They said that during the computer age. But pay attention, because that's the most dangerous fallacy you can believe right now. The Industrial Revolution replaced human muscle with machines. We adapted using our brains. The computer revolution replaced human calculation with processors. We adapted using creativity and strategy. The AI revolution replaces brains, creativity, and strategy. What's left for us? Where will we run? There is no higher cognitive terrain to which humanity can escape. We are the final barrier, and that barrier has been broken. Big corporations know this. That's why they talk so much about universal basic income. They're not being kind, they're scared. They know they're building a world where 90% of the population will have no economic value. Basic income isn't a salary. It's an allowance to keep the population calm while the owners of the algorithms accumulate wealth that would make the pharaohs of Egypt look like beggars. This is where the comparison with 2008 becomes frightening. Back then, governments intervened. They injected money. They bailed out the banks to save the economy. But how will the government intervene now? You can't ban mathematics. You can't shut down the internet. The AI arms race is global. If one country stops for ethical reasons, the neighboring country continues and dominates the market. It's a perfect trap. We're stuck in a vehicle speeding towards a wall, and nobody has access to the brakes, because stepping on the brakes means losing the race. And in the midst of all this, there we are, individuals, people with dreams, with bills to pay, with children to raise. What do we tell our children today? Study hard for what? Learn to program. AI already programs better. Learn languages? Simultaneous translation is already perfect. We are facing an educational vacuum. We don't know how to prepare the next generation because we don't know what the world will be like next Tuesday, let alone in 10 years. This uncertainty erodes mental health. Human beings need predictability. We need to know that if we plant today, we will harvest tomorrow. AI has broken this logic of cause and effect. You can strive as hard as possible and still be surpassed by someone who pressed a button. Merit is dead. And when merit dies, hope dies with it. Remember Alice or Lucas, the architect? Let's go back to them, because their story doesn't end with their dismissal. The real tragedy begins afterward. Lucas tries to reinvent himself. He tries to become a carpenter, to make something with his hands, something real. But he realizes that the market is flooded with ex-lawyers, ex-designers, and ex-engineers trying to do the same thing. The competition for manual labor, the only one that AI hasn't yet completely dominated because of the cost of robotics, becomes brutal. Salaries plummet. The tech elite lives in digital fortresses, while the masses fight for the crumbs of the physical world. This isn't dystopian science fiction. Look at the data. Income inequality in tech hubs like San Francisco is already at its highest in modern history, and it's spreading. The middle class, that layer of society that sustained democracy for a century, is being eviscerated. And a society without a middle class isn't a democracy. It's a feudal system with Wi-Fi. We have the new feudal lords, the owners of the foundation models. And we have the digital servants, us, who generate the data that trains their models, often for free, every time we solve a captcha or post a photo. In 2008, they stole our money. Today, they are stealing our life experience to create an immortal digital version of ourselves that doesn't need us. Consider the concept of model collapse. Researchers have found that if AIs start training with data generated by other AIs, they become dumber and collapse. They need human data. They need our original creativity, our pain, our imperfection. They need us as fuel. We are the plankton that feeds the whale. And what happens to the plankton? It is consumed. The destruction of people, therefore, is not physical, as in a war. It is ontological. It is the destruction of being. You wake up in the morning, look in the mirror and ask yourself, what is my advantage? And the silence that comes as an answer is deafening. But there's a turning point in this narrative, a point where sadness needs to transform into anger and anger into strategy. Because despite everything, the machine lacks one thing. It lacks intention. The AI doesn't want anything. It doesn't wake up wanting to conquer the world. Those who want to conquer the world are the people who control the AI. The enemy isn't the code. The enemy is the unbridled human greed that is using the code to concentrate power. In 2008, we let them get away with it. Nobody was arrested. The system was patched up and went back to working for the same owners. If we do the same now, if we passively accept that we are obsolete, then we deserve the fate they designed for us. But if we understand that our humanity, our flaws, our unpredictability is the only thing the machine cannot perfectly replicate, perhaps we have a chance. Resistance will not be waged with weapons. It will be waged by reclaiming what is real, by fanatically valuing what is human. We will have to create a parallel economy where labels made by humans are worth more than gold, where imperfection is the seal of quality, where we refuse to consume the synthetic content they vomit onto our screens. The 2008 crisis ended when the market stabilized. The AI crisis isn't going to end. It's the new normal. The water has risen and it won't recede. We need to learn to breathe underwater or build boats. And building boats requires us to stop looking at screens and look at each other. Technology has isolated us to weaken us. The only way out is radical reconnection. Because in the end, when machines do everything better than us, the only thing left for us to do will be to take care of each other. The only profession of the future is being human. And ironically, it's the profession we've spent the last 100 years forgetting how to practice. The clock isn't just ticking, it's accelerating. And the question that's been hammering in your head right now shouldn't be how I'm going to save my job. That question is too small. The right question is, what am I if I am not my job? If you don't have a solid answer to that in the next few years, the crisis won't just bankrupt you, it will erase you. 2008 was a warning. It was an earthquake before the volcano. The volcano has erupted now. The lava is flowing. Will you stand there gazing at the hypnotic glow of the fire, or will you start running for higher ground? The choice is yours. But time is not